My name is Charlene Sani. I'm thrilled to be your host. Together, we'll be diving into an exciting topic. We have 5 steps to enhancing user engagement through a modern digital experience. This webinar is brought to you by Sitefinity and our premium partner, Enqbator, along with our special guest, Clackamas Community College. We're here to explore how organizations like yours can leverage digital strategies to foster better user engagement and also create impactful online experiences. Throughout our session, we'll uncover practical insights and actionable steps that you can implement to elevate your digital presence and connect more effectively with your audience. Once again, thank you for being here, and let's jump in. All right, so we have a very brief agenda. First, we start off with introductions, a brief project overview, and then we're going to jump into the 5 steps to modernize your digital experience. All right, so today's speakers. Our first speaker is our special guest, Lori Hall, Executive Director of College Relations and Marketing at Clackamas Community College. Next is Kathy Haushan from Enqbator. Kathy's the VP of Strategy and Business Development. And then we have Jada Marcanti, also from Enqbator. Jada is the UX Specialist and Project Manager. Then we have Milani Dumont, our Digital Experience Guru and Sales Engineer here at Sitefinity. Lastly is myself, Charlene Sani, part of the Partner Development Team here at Progress. And up next is the company overview, and I'll hand it over to Lori and Kathy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lori from Clackamas Community College. I just want to give you a brief overview about our college. We are a first-tier suburbs of Portland, Oregon. We have 3 campuses in Oregon, Milwaukee, and Wilsonville. We offer more than 100 career technical education programs, and we are an emerging Hispanic serving institution. We have about 20,000 students a year. And if you're wondering who our student population is, the average age is 30, but last year our youngest graduate was 17 and the oldest was 75. That's you, Kathy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Haushan. Thank you so much for having us today. Enqbator is a digital agency, and we specialize in building websites, mobile apps, and standalone apps. So our entire team is Sitefinity certified, and our CEO is actually one of a handful of leaders that's been invited by Progress to be a Sitefinity champion. We work on all aspects of the web app development process, from discovery to deployment. But we also do have some specialized expertise in making recommendations on how you can use your website most effectively by looking at the entire web ecosystem and the integrations between different systems versus solely just looking at the website by itself. We have a huge focus on customer service. It's at the center of all we do, and we're really proud to have the trust of all of our clients to refer us. Thank you again for having us.
All right, I'm going to share a little bit about the project overview of what Clackamas Community College was trying to achieve with this website redesign that we partnered with Enqbator with. As the college adopted some new strategic priorities and adopted a guide pathways model, we doubled down on our commitment also to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it was important to us to bring those values to the college's website. It had been a number of years since we had updated the website at all. And so our goals with this redesign were to really remove barriers for students. We found that there was too much scrolling or too many clicks. Students were not finding the information they needed in a timely manner or at all. Also, the website was really cumbersome for those on mobile devices. Many of our students are economically challenged, and they use phones. They don't necessarily have laptops or desktop computers to use, and our site was not mobile responsive. So making it more mobile friendly was important for us. And then also the website not kept up with our strategic shifts, like becoming a guide pathways college, which is a nationwide movement of really focusing on students getting on a path, keeping them on the path, and then helping them complete their path. So they're taking less credits and less time and saving time and money. And then not taking classes that don't count toward their degree. And I think that's about it that I had for our goals.
So we follow with all of our projects at Enqbator, we follow a strategic process. We customize it for every client because no two organizations are the same. So the majority of what we're going to be going over today with you is walking through this process that we went through with Clackamas Community College. But even if your company is a completely different industry, you'll still be able to use a lot of the strategies that we review at your own organizations. So we'll start with collecting data. That's step one. And then we take that research and we use it to build design that really thinks about how the user is navigating to the site. Then we ensure the design follows responsive and accessible best practices. And then once we've created that design and the layouts that meets the needs of the users, then we actually look at the flexible DXP. And it's really important to choose a digital experience platform that's flexible and scalable, like the Sitefinity platform is. And then lastly, we'll talk about some of the integrations and custom modules that were built for Clackamas specifically that supported their users' journeys. So step one in that process is to conduct user research to inform decisions. There are three components that are important to complete in this step. Those are gain institutional buy-in, collect data, and then distill data. So first, we're going to have Lori talk about that process that she went through for gaining that institutional buy-in.
Sure. For a lot of institutions in higher education, having a really inclusive process is important. If you work for an institution of higher education, you'll know that you have a lot of really smart people who work for you and have a lot of really strong opinions. So it's really important to have an inclusive process that brings them along and then relies on them for the expertise and for them to be champions of the project. So this had been a lot of years from our last redesign. We wanted to have our specific approach that was driven by an assessment process. So prior to partnering with Enqbator, we did hold a pretty expansive website assessment process that was college-wide, which includes surveys and focus groups and user testing. And so we came with quite a bit of data to Enqbator, who then built on that. Along with assessments and surveys, we also had really strong communications during the entire redesign. We involved leadership across the entire way. We developed the WAG, which is our web advisory group, which had stakeholders all across the college, from admissions to advising to faculty to even folks in campus services like our maintenance folks. And then also we really relied on our diversity, equity, inclusion committee to help us in the process. So how we thought about who those stakeholders are, we thought about, how they represent students, who are the heavy users of your website, the folks that really know the ins and outs of it. So they are more familiar with how the navigation works, and then where perhaps some of the problem or challenge areas are. And that's how we did, and then that's how we can also use this, use the data to determine the user needs and personas.
Lori, I'd like to jump in here and ask a question. This is such an important first step, to an implementation. And I was just hoping that maybe you can expand a bit more on the process that you had to follow, for officially launching the project once the decision was made to do a redesign, that buy-in process with stakeholders, working with Enqbator, all the way to go live. Is there any more you can add to that?
Sure. So as a community college, and I believe a lot of health institutions also have this, it's called shared governance. And it's really about bringing people along and allowing voices along in a process and taking them with you. And so one of the challenges in a shared governance structure is that it takes longer to get things done because you are involving so many more voices in a process. But the benefits are, it results in a much more successful product that is really having a full scope and picture of what you're trying to accomplish, that I really appreciate. And so organizations might not have a shared governance process, but you could probably take some bits and pieces of this and what we did and apply it to your own institution.
So in terms of collecting data, like Lori said, there's already a lot of data that was collected about general user behavior on the website to make sure that everybody was kind of along in the same mindset that there needed to be a redesign. But then specifically when we're talking about the user experience, there was additional data that we had to collect. And so there was a gap, a little bit of a gap in the data. So in order to collect that data, we collected it from 3 different areas. So from the website. So this is looking at what are people actually doing on the website. From the organization, what do you want users to be able to do on the website? And then from the actual users, what are the users' expectations on what they expect to be able to do on the website?
Kathy, gathering this data is very important, of course, and it has to be a very thorough process. And so just for those who are in the audience that may not be in the higher education industry, would there be a different approach for gathering this information? You know, for example, would you use surveys for a financial company redesign or a B2B company site redesign, or again, just other industries?
I think it really depends on, it doesn't really depend so much on the industry that you're in, as opposed to what's the aptitude of the organization to do some of that data collection, if that makes sense. And so with Clackamas, they had already done some internal surveying. They had already done some of the focus groups. So it was really difficult to ask people to, again, do focus groups and interviews and go through that entire process. And so what we did with Clackamas was we did a survey and we collected information from and received about 700 survey results, and then used that to supplement the data that we had already had. But depending on where you are in that discovery process, really depends on what the aptitude is of the organization to do some of that data collection. There's been other organizations where they hadn't yet bought into the fact that that there was a redesign needed, and so we kind of started from the interview process. So it really depends on where you are in that discovery process.
Yeah, so once we've collected all of the data, then the next step is then to take a look at all of that and start to distill all that data. So for this project, we had both qualitative and quantitative data. And so we kind of took a look at both of these, combined them to try to get just a comprehensive view of what that feedback was from the users. So for the qualitative data, some of the examples of the type of data that we had were surveys, like Kathy mentioned, and then some stakeholder and student interviews, anecdotal feedback or stories just that the Clackamas team had heard personally from students. And so once we started to analyze this data for the qualitative data, it can be a more manual or time-consuming process to sort through and go through all of these things. Even with specific tools, if you're using AI and things like that, it can help to summarize some of these things, but it was important for our team to still get in there and really become familiar with it ourselves so that we can make sure that we have a comprehensive understanding of what that data is saying. So once we became familiar with it, then we started to identify these different themes and categorize different pieces of feedback and label those, and then start to prioritize. For the quantitative data, again, some examples of this that we used were surveys, different rating skills, usability testing, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and then analytics and heat maps. And so for the quantitative data, again, this part can be a little faster, I guess you'd say, compared to the qualitative data, because a lot of tools like Google Analytics or Hotjar, things like that, can provide some reports for you already. So once we had those, then our focus was to analyze those and then really start to determine how the best way to visualize that data was. So we wanted to make sure that it was easy to read and understand for the Clackamas team, for any stakeholders, but also that we weren't just presenting a bunch of numbers, but that we were really getting to like the heart of what those numbers were saying. so that we can provide value for the next steps and going into the design.
That you learned, through this process that you didn't maybe know before, expect before?
Yeah, what really all this data did, it served two purposes. One, it confirmed our suspicions. Like we thought students weren't scrolling past the fold on the homepage, but this, yes, we found that to be true. It helped us really focus on what we needed to think about and change in the redesign. One of the we've heard this over and over again in the results, but one student put it very clearly. They want to know what classes they need to take, when to take them, and how much it's going to cost. And so that kind of became our guiding light along this process of making sure that we had that top of mind, and resulted in this amazing search tool that Enqbator created for us, a tuition calculator, and better integration with our course catalog. But the second thing that all this data did is I made sure to ground every single conversation I had at the college when we were talking about the redesign, that this was all grounded in data. And so we're not just making decisions, based on whim or because we think something looks pretty. It's all based on the data. And, people have a hard time arguing against the data when you have it. So it was really helpful to have us, kind of be our guiding lights in the process.
Yep, so step 2 is design user-centric navigation and guided pathways. So like Lori just mentioned, it was really important to the Clackamas team and to us that once we started to build out these designs, that they were rooted in data that we got from students and from users. And so, again, as she mentioned, it was the aesthetics and different colors and things like that really came secondary. So we started off with some wireframes to make sure that we got the layout, made sure all the elements were there, all the users' needs were addressed first. And then after that was reviewed and approved, then we kind of went on to the second step of just looking at the design and, again, some of those colors and branding and things like that. And then from there, we really wanted to simplify and reorganize some of the navigation so that users could find what they're looking for easier. And so one example of a way that we did this was actually to add an additional top navigation that was specifically for different user groups. And so what we did was, with that data that we had collected, we had created these personas. So these were things like current students, future students, community members, employees, faculty, different audience segments like that. And so we used those personas as we're thinking about creating this additional navigation and adding some quick links specifically for each of them, for different links and resources that they use the most or that they're looking for the most, to make it easier for them to just quickly and easily find what they need.
And then to touch on the guide pathways again, what Enqbator did such a great job on is, as part of our guide pathways model, we have what we call educational focus areas. And what that does is bundle certain majors together, like business, health sciences, industrial technology. And what we want students to do is identify with, I am in the business educational area of guide pathways, and with it is associated icons and colors and themes. And so starting right on the home page, students can be exposed to and interact with our guide pathways model, and it carried through to a program and degree and certificate search page all the way down to the program pages. And it just really amplifies that pathway that we're trying to create for students, from the process of enrollment to all the way to getting their course materials. So that was huge in the design process. And also, as part of our DEI initiative, it was creating a sense of belonging and identity for students so they can see themselves in the website and their community. And so it was important for us to also think about the imagery that we're using, and then so students can see themselves, because as I mentioned before, we have a very diverse student body, and just making sure that students see themselves in the website was important.
So then this is just a few examples of what Lori and I had just mentioned, taking a look at some of those elements that we added with this redesign. So you can see on the left side is the homepage for Clackamas after the redesign. And then on the right side are just some highlighted elements that we had mentioned to use as examples. So the first one on the right side is just some quick links up at the top. And those were links that students were using most frequently and keep coming back to, if not every day, clicking through some of those. So we wanted to make sure that those were easily accessible. And then the next one is what I had mentioned earlier. So a couple of those links for future students, current students, veterans, community, and employees. And then each of those, again, had some quick links for them to find what they're looking for. And then the beginner journey section. So this was entirely new for the redesign. And again, we had mapped out this student journey using some of the data that we had and kind of put it into these 5 steps so that once students visited the homepage, they were able to easily identify where they are in this journey and then have links right there to help them continue and stay on that right path to find what they're looking for.
All right, so it was important for us to have a responsive and accessible design practices, especially for ADA accessibility, as well as being mobile friendly. So like I mentioned earlier, a lot of our students rely on their cell phones to navigate our website and access the materials and resources on it. So we wanted to reduce the amount of scrolling, and Enqbator achieve that by doing a lot of collapsible boxes that can close when you first experience the page, and then you can expand them, which reduces the amount of scrolling. We also eliminated any left to right scrolling that we previously had that was not intuitive for students. And then during our usability testing, we tested with students, and I think this is an important thing to do if you're able to do it. We had students who had a variety of backgrounds, including students who are neurodiverse and were veterans and different abilities of being able to navigate technology. And what we found across the board is one example of what we changed is the top navigation was originally a light gray color. We found that not a single tester was using that to navigate the website. And we asked them why. They didn't even notice it was there. And so that was one thing that we had changed in the redesign based on the user testing. And then another change was the font size. We had heard in the users, as well as just some feedback we got visiting classrooms, was that they thought the font size was too small. And that was another change that resulted in having some real user testing and feedback on the design.
I'd like to ask, this is actually, accessibility is a big topic with me on my day-to-day speaking with customers. And so were there any specific features, and this question is for either you, Lori, or even Enqbator, is there any specific features that you utilized in Sitefinity to help meet compliance?
Yeah, so I think Sitefinity's flexibility and customization meant that we could tailor some of the different content types, even the navigation, to have certain fields or labels that would include accessibility features. So even things like alt tags for images, or making sure that we have proper semantic structures, things like that. So I think that was really helpful. And then we did use Bootstrap for this project, which is Sitefinity, the framework that Sitefinity uses. So that also allowed us to then focus more on front-end implementation and making sure that everything is responsive and accessible on that end too. And then this is just the example that Lori had just mentioned. So you can see this first image was the original design that we were using for the usability testing. It has that light gray bar at the top, and that was what students weren't even noticing was there. So then this is just some examples of different iterations. So we decided to change that to something that was bolder and more easily to see. which you can see is the blue bar now. And then just another example of just keeping in mind high contrast colors, especially text on the background, to make sure that it's easy to read for everyone.
So I'm going to jump in because as a Sitefinity sales engineer, I really want to get, I'm eager to get your feedback, Lori, on these application requirements, considering that, Clackamas has been a long-time user of the products. So what are some of the most useful Sitefinity features that you either have always used or found and will be using while you were planning this design?
Thanks, Melanie. So I am not a webmaster. I am not a web developer. I am not familiar with the ins and outs of the website. However, about a year ago, both members of my web team went on parental leave at the exact same time and were gone for about 6 months. And I had a quick lesson on how to make changes and adjustments and updates to the website along with our communications person. So number one for me is the ease of making updates for us lay people who aren't familiar with how websites work. We were able to keep things up and running in that period. The interface is really intuitive. And then what's key for us also, why we chose Sitefinity, is that we aren't maxed out on what we can do with that platform yet. We can still customize and grow as the college changes and our needs change and our priorities change. We can leverage advanced features as Sitefinity advances. Things that we're excited to look into now that the redesign is done is personalization. We would love to start testing out the A/B testing, more third-party integrations, and then a request we get a lot at the college is people want to take ownership of their own pages and make updates on their pages, and so we'd love to start implementing permissions and training for that. So I love that it's very scalable for us, but also usable for those of us who are not as technical as others.
That's great to hear. Is there any features that you aren't using that you're interested in exploring further, or you plan to use in the future?
Yeah, so it's definitely that personalization and A/B testing, and then the permissions.
Great.
So as Lori mentioned, as you're looking at a content management system, one of the things that you need to think about if you're on Sitefinity or if you're exploring or even if you're on a different content management system is how easy it is to work in from a front end user expectation. So if you're able to update content easily, if the content editors, regardless of their level of technical expertise, if they're able to easily update content day to day, but also the backend developers are also working in the content management system, albeit a different area of the content management system, but they're still working in it. And so one of the things that that works really well is a lot of content management systems have a lot of out of the box functionality, but as users' expectations grow online and their needs have been growing, and they expect to have additional functionality available on your website, the need for custom modules and the development of those custom functionalities grows. And so that's one of the areas that Sitefinity does really well, while Sitefinity also provides a lot of out of the box functionality that's just pretty standard that you can build on top of. You can also create your own custom functionality. And so one example of that is the degree detail pages and the degree and certificates page. So on the screenshot on the right is the degree and certificates page. So regardless if you're a prospective student and you're not sure what to study, or if you're a current student looking for information on your courses, users can search and filter information on this page if they want to explore the program options available at Clackamas. The cards give you a quick overview of the program, like the type of degree, if it's an associate degree or a transfer degree or a certificate, and then the length of time. So it gives you just that quick information that you need in order to make a decision. And then if you're really interested in learning more about that degree or certificate, you can see the degree detail page, which is a screenshot on the left-hand side. And this page gives you a lot more information on that degree or certificate. And so you'll see at the top, when we're talking about building these pathways to get to these landing pages where the users can actually complete the tasks that they're intending to do or find the information that they're looking for on the website. On the right-hand side, and I think it's a little bit hard to see, but on the right-hand side, those red buttons, they either very quickly give you a link on how to get started or a link to get more information. So right at the top, whether or not you already know what you need to do or you need to find out more information, there's those clear call to actions right at the top of the page. And then as you go down further in the page and on the left-hand side, there's a little bit more information about like classes, job outlook, and things like that. This degree detail page is employing a custom module, and it also has an integration with some third-party services. So Clackamas was able to leverage information that already existed in other systems and pull it onto this page using this, seamlessly. And it creates efficiencies with updating content across different mediums, which is important for a lot of different organizations.
Congratulations to you both for a great implementation and project. I do have one last question for both of you, actually. So Enqbator, I know that you've done, Kathy and Jade, I know you've done many projects, but, these questions for both of you, really, for Lori as well. Is there anything that you've learned, I guess, on this particular project that you could maybe, provide some suggestions to others, whether it's higher education institutions or other industries that may be in the process or thinking of getting into the process of changing, redesigning or a project of this magnitude?
I can jump in first. This was my first website redesign, so I learned a ton along the way. One is definitely get that data to ground everything that you're doing to help you make decisions. To have a really inclusive process if you can. I know it's a lot more work, but you're going to have much better results. We launched on July 3rd, and I've heard nothing but compliments. No one has been surprised. No one has been upset. Everyone has been excited about the changes because they've been part of the process. And then I had a 4. What was the 4? Oh, just expect challenges. This was, we thought we were going into one thing. It ended up being a lot more than what we anticipated, but the result was just so much more than we were dreaming for. So expect some bumps in the road, but hopefully they're good bumps.
Great.
I guess from our perspective, we do a lot of these, and and everyone is different. But at the end of the day, it is a really large undertaking. And we understand that this is a project that's typically a project that's on top of your day-to-day work. And so just coming to the understanding and having open communication with your partner is really important, because at the end of the day, we all have the same goal. And so if we try to keep that at the forefront, that it is a big project, it's a huge undertaking, but if we all kind of roll up our sleeves and jump in together and have open communication, then it'll get done at the end of the day. And so I guess that's the mantra that we, throughout this project and all the website redesigns that we do, that's the mantra that we kind of keep in the back of our mind. And so we're able to do a lot of work and be productive, but also have a lot of fun doing it. And so I guess that's the advice I can say, is that it's going to be difficult, and there's going to be a lot of things that you may or not agree with, but if you guys come to the table and everybody listens to what which happened a lot in our project, we just listen to what the needs are and listen to each other and then come to an agreement on how to move forward, then you can launch within time and budget, and with a lot of celebration at the end.
Great. So we can open up the questions to the audience if anybody would like to ask a question. There's a chat or announcement, a questions section in the webinar window. If not, Charlene, I'll kick it back over to you, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions. So yeah, let's look at the last page. Jada or Kathy, would you like to speak on this?
If you guys would like more information, I know this was about a year-long project that we squished into 45 minutes, but there is a case study on the work that we presented today on our website. So if you're interested, please snap the QR code there and it'll lead you to a case study that gives more detail. I believe it also has information to contact Lori, Jada, and I, and the folks on the Progress team. If you're interested in or have any questions that come up, feel free to reach out to us via email anytime. Always happy to answer any questions or regardless of where you are in the process.
Awesome.
Lori or Jada or Milani, Charlene, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'd just say thank you to everybody. Thank you for joining. And if you're interested in additional tips on how to modernize your digital experience, we do have other sessions coming out. So be on the lookout and join the Progress channel at Bright Talk. So thank you. And thank you for the speakers today. And look forward to seeing you next month. Bye. Take care, everybody.